Burnside was put in charge of the Army of the Potomac and sent south. Lincoln hoped he finally had a general to succeed. Burnside met General Lee at the city of Fredericksburg, where he intended to rapidly cross the river and take the city. But the Union War Department was too slow in delivering the pontoon bridges, and the two sides were forced to camp across from each other, close enough to speak. Hey Yankee, ready to get your butt kicked? Yeah, right, Rebel. God is on our side. No way, God's on our side. Oh, you think so? Well, why don't we ask him? God, whose side are you? With over 100,000 men, the Union Army finally launched their massive attack on the 11th of December. But by now, the Confederates had amassed their forces. During the battle, wave after wave of brave Union men marched headlong into a brutal Confederate onslaught. Even the Confederates didn't believe what they were seeing, and in one moment of gravity, a Confederate sergeant, able to take it, reportedly came out into the field to tend to the Union wounded. Seeing this, the Union troops held their fire. Still, Burnside and his forces were soundly defeated at Fredericksburg and forced to retreat. Lincoln's popularity and Northern morale especially as the winter heading into 1863 was bad. The winter troops were rife with disease. Food was less than appealing. On both sides, men began to leave. Hey, where do you think you're going? I'm deserting. What? Don't you love your country? Yes, I do. And I'm trying to get back to it as quick as I can. Lincoln, whatever the kind and caring man he was, spent much of his time pardoning deserters' death sentences. Oh my, he's a 70-year-old boy. I'd better suspend his sentence, or he'll be suspended tomorrow. What? To try to keep the numbers up, both sides had introduced conscription. There was controversy in the North, however, since rich men could simply pay to have someone else fight for their tax. Riots broke out in New York City with enraged mobs, furious at the idea of going to fight for slaves, an idea that many of them simply did not support. However, after so much pressure, the Union had finally begun allowing black men to enlist, and these men, knowing what they were fighting for, signed up. By the end of the war, 10% of the Union Army would be black. The valor and bravery showed throughout silence. Okay, well that last guy was useless. Let's try this Hooker fellow. General Joseph Hooker was up in charge of the army, and once again, Lincoln ordered him to move south to Richmond. Hooker met the Battle of Chancellorsville, where Hooker had only twice the men leaving. Lee was forced to fly all the way and split his smaller forces into two. Lee had actually no chance of winning. Was his masterpiece. Lee did suffer one significant loss during the battle, as his right-hand man, Stonewall Jackson, was riding back to the Confederate camp at night. He was nervous and opened fire. Jackson died. As he heard
unidentified enemy leader landing.
Lost, and northern support wavered. While the Union kept on struggling, out west, unconditional surrender was making moves as always. In an attempt to take Vicksburg on the Mississippi, he made a series of risky and bold movements. He sent a cavalry raid and feigned Sherman north to confuse the enemy. Then, aided by a fleet of ironclads on the river, he raced his army south to cross the Mississippi. Aware that the terrain to the north was restricted, instead, he strategically moved northeast, hitting Vicksburg's supply line and defending his rear from Confederate armies in Jackson. Once he reached Vicksburg, the Confederate defense was hardened, and he ran his force to settle it for a month-long siege, during which time he got rather frustrated. Despite not taking the city,
about to detonate the fuel supply. Disarm the charges now.
Hold firm. It would only be a matter of time before the Mississippi was in the Union hands. Around this time, the people in the west of Virginia, who had remained loyal to the Union throughout, finally
We're
broke away
losing
from
ground.
their own
This
state.
battlefield
They
is
could
to
have
their
named it
advantage.
anything
Fall
in the
back
world,
to
but the
secondary
creative minds at the
positions.
time came up with genius, West Virginia. Back in Washington,
If they
Lincoln
force their
once
way
again
through,
wanted
they'll
a new
reach the
general to
detention
take
block.
command.
That is
Then why do all
unacceptable.
these
We'll
19th
mount our
century
defense
generals
at the
look
main
so
gate.
bust? Look, we got Sleepy Eyes Joe here. That's Princess Leia with a mustache. E.T. from the Doctor. Fine, why don't we get General Snapping Turtle McGee put
We have
charge
an
of the
ally
army
on
of the
site,
Potomac.
a
And
special
it was
operative.
a crucial time for the Union, because once again, the Confederates decided to go on the attack. So far, they had been extremely off militarily, but as the war kept going, the Confederate economy was crumbling. Riots broke out in the streets of Richmond as the price of bread skyrocketed. Supplies were dwindling. Jefferson Davis wanted to send men west to rescue Vicksburg, but General Lee knew the longer the war lasted, the worse their chances got. And he still had to just threaten to see the already demoralized North with surrender. So in June 1863, with the momentum behind him, General Lee once again entered the North, fighting his way through Maryland and into Pennsylvania. General Lee set out to meet for what would be the most significant battle of the entire war. If the Confederates won, DC could pull. If the Union won, it would be a turning point as the Confederates would run out of steam, and the small town that was to get caught up in the cross-country of the largest battle in American history was Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. On June 1st, units from each army encountered one another and skirmished through the town itself. The townspeople were forced to take refuge, except for one man who reportedly ran outside for a strange reason. "Joseph, what are you doing?" "I'm not gonna let them eat my beef." "How many times do I have to tell you? They're not here for your beef." By the second day, over 100,000 men stretched for miles across the battlefield. Lee took the initiative, deciding to hit the enemy's flanks, and he came very close to breaking through the Union's disorganized left. But Union Colonel Joshua Chamberlain ordered a desperate bayonet charge, smashing into the Confederates and forcing them back. The Union forces held across the line. On the final day, the Union army had fortified its flanks, so they decided to finish off one massive separate assault. The Confederates rushed into the flanks during General Meade's charge, and this time it was the Union's turn to unleash hell. Meade had correctly guessed the strategy. The Confederates were decimated, forced to turn. A devastated General Lee called out to his fleeing and wounded men, telling them it was his fault. And after holding for a counterattack that never came, he ordered a retreat back into Virginia. The North had just managed to score a massive victory.
Top resistance agent on site. Priority
That wasn't
target.
enough. The West, after a month-long siege, Vicksburg finally fell. The North now held the Mississippi. And better yet, it was the 4th of July. With control of the Mississippi, Union forces moved into Arkansas and Tennessee. Tennessee in particular saw heavy fighting, with Union General Rosecrans masterfully pushing Braxton Bragg's Army of the Tennessee out of Tennessee. He suffered a major setback, however. The bloody battle of Chickamauga ended up with a Confederate siege at Chattanooga. At one point during the siege, a temporary truce was declared so that wounded men could be recovered. But often in the Civil War, during these small truces, men would go aside and eat the mill, breaking like tobacco, and maybe even honey. If you like honey, it's hard to drink. And you know what rhymes with honey? Money. Did you know honey can help you save money? Let me explain. Honey is a free browser tool that automatically finds you the best coupon codes when you buy stuff online for free. For example, here I am purchasing 100 hyperlinks.
They're making fools of us. Retake
Which
the
is the
gate.
click of a button. I've saved $210. Nice. Honey works with over 30,000 websites, including FedEx, Target, and Expedia. And it's already found Oversimplified subscribers over $46,000 in savings. It takes just 2 clicks to install. And better yet, it's
The
absolutely
gate is
positively
breached.
100%
Withdraw and ready a
free.
defense.
Get Honey now and start saving money by clicking on the link in the description below. Joinhoney.com/oversimplified. That's
The fleet battle goes poorly. The invaders have
joinhoney.com/oversimplified.
sabotaged
And as
us.
always, you'll
But
be
they must
supporting my
not free their
channel.
people
So
from the
thank you.
detention block.
Now where
They'll
was I?
try to override the cell doors
Vicksburg,
and in a gate.
4th of July,
We will not
and the
allow
siege
it.
of Chattanooga. Thankfully, General Grant, now in charge of all Western Union armies, showed up and karate-kicked Bragg right back into Georgia. Like this. With Sherman and Hooker crashed upon Confederate positions in the mountains around the city, including the famous battle above the clouds on Lincoln's Ridge. Grant continued to be Lincoln's #1 guy. With these victories, Lincoln hoped the war was finally over. Back in Gettysburg, the entire town was turned into a hospital to care for the scores of wounded men. Throughout the war, on both sides, women such as Clara Barton rose to the occasion, doing crucial work on the home front and volunteering in nursing for those who had given their lives. A new national cemetery was established. Abraham Lincoln traveled to England and the opening ceremony. At the event, the main speaker spoke for 2 hours. Then, Abraham Lincoln was called forward to give some brief, appropriate remarks. In just 2 minutes, he masterfully and poignantly iterated America's national purpose and the need to continue the fight. The Gettysburg Address would become one of the most famous speeches in American history. While they were now making progress, the North still couldn't find a decisive victory in the East. And that was bad news for Lincoln, because his presidency was now in its 4th year. In 1864, there was an election coming. The Confederacy was sick, and with little hope left, Lincoln's regiment became terrible. Their last shot at victory maybe in the election, since Lincoln, emancipation, and the war itself
Blast the
weren't
intruders
exactly
and cancel the
popular.
override.
People in the north were sick of war and wanted to put it behind them. Robert E. Lee said that if he could just hold out and continue to inflict more defeats,
Trying to
the
override
people
cell
of the north
doors.
would vote Lincoln out and replace him with a southern
Run to the
sympathizer who
resistance.
may be
Go.
willing to negotiate. Lincoln knew now he desperately needed a victory. Now, I know what you're thinking, but oversimplify. If Lincoln loves General Grant so much, then why doesn't he put him in charge of the campaign in the East? Well, guess what, loyal subscriber? You've hit the nail on the head. You're bold, Grant. I'll grant you that. I'm promoting you to General-in-Chief, and I ain't taking you for granted. Now, I want you to go defeat Lee. Grant me my wish. Please stop. So Grant was put in charge, and he came up with a new plan. He wanted
We've
to press
lost
the
access
Confederates
to the
on
inner
four
gate.
fronts. The general
Stand together
tanks
at the
after
Silk
Mobile,
Patrol.
Alabama.
Let the
General Sherman
resistance
moving
die
south
there.
to Atlanta, and Grant joining the Army of the Potomac as they advanced through Virginia. In May 1864, that plan went into action. Sherman steadily advanced on Atlanta, facing off against the small Confederate army under General Joseph Johnston. In addition, a cruel yet highly skilled cavalry general and winner of the funniest Confederate statue award, Nathan Bedford Forrest, was also nearby, doing his best to threaten Sherman's advance. But in a series of battles, Sherman dominated and pushed Johnson back to the city. But he was held just outside of Atlanta itself and was forced to lay siege. Meanwhile, the main show was happening in Eastern Virginia. The Union's top general was finally about to fuse off against the Confederates. Lincoln took Grant and bring something new. He did. As Grant began moving south, he was still regularly outnumbered and inflicted heavy casualties, but we gained more weight than normal and much speed. But here's what set Grant apart from others. He knew he was running out of time, and the more time he does, Grant withdrew his forces out. Grant, rather than pulling back, gave the order to keep moving forward and fight Lee again and again. In under 6 weeks, 80,000 men would be killed, wounded, or missing. In D.C., Grant was criticized for being a butcher. At the Battle of the Wilderness,
Enemy taking
Union
the South
casualties
Control.
were so heavy that Grant reportedly began to lose. But still, Grant could replace his losses. Lee couldn't. All the way back to Virginia, Union was dropped to be under siege. Then it would only be a matter of time. Close to Richmond, Grant again suffered horrific casualties in a miscalculated assault on Harvard. Then, trying to be a tricksy trickster, instead of moving on Richmond directly, Grant moved towards Petersburg to flank the Confederate
Ray
capital
has been
and cut
seen.
its supply line.
Exercise
But, just like
caution
Sherman,
around her.
Grant was halted outside of the city, and he too was forced to settle in
Enemy
for a
overriding
siege.
the cell control!
Two identical sieges would not be enough to Lincoln's
Too
reelection.
late for the
People of
resistance
the North
now.
saw the
Star
casualties
Killer is
Grant had
ready to
taken,
fire,
and they
and with their
were
base
happy.
and fleet
To
gone,
make matters
our
worse,
enemy
Lee had
will
sent
be
Jubal early north to threaten D.C. with the hope